Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us at the discussion for the future of retail. I'm Celine from China Breton Business Council, the sector lead of retail and e-commerce, and I'm based in London. Today, we have Siu, co-founder and chief creative officer from the Orangeblowfish, and Matt, founder and general manager of Downland, Shanghai. Well, I'll let them do the self-introduction first. Siu, would you like to do that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Siu, as Celine said. Thank you, Celine. Chief Creative Officer and co-founder of the Orangeblowfish creative agency, headquartered here in Shanghai.
Okay, Matt?
Hi, this is Matt. I'm the founder and the GM of Downland Betting. We started to do the betting business in China back to 8 years ago. It is 2015. And we've experienced the ups and downs of the so-called upgrade of the consumption in China.
Great, thank you very much both. Well, now let's welcome Siu to share his insights on the future of retail in China. Over to you.
Okay, brilliant. Let me just share screen. This is right. And then wait 1 second, I just need to press play. You able to see the screen, Celine? Brilliant. Okay, so thank you again for the introduction there, Celine, and thank you everyone for joining today. Today I'm going to talk about the future of retail. And a quick introduction, I'll show a quick video of who we are at the Orangeblowfish and what we do. As you saw there, we are a creative agency. We work within branding and spatial design. And what I want to talk today really about is the future of retail and where we see things going. We've been doing this for 10 plus years now, and there's a couple of top insights that we want to share today with the CBBC members. And really, when we think about retail, we think about how to engage people within retail spaces. And there's 3 different key parts to this. The first is really engaging the 6 senses. The second is co-create to engage. And the third part is this idea of no tech is the best tech. What we mean by the 6 senses is, again, when we think about senses, there's only actually 5 senses, right? But there is actually a 6th sense, and I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. I mean, when we think about how people are engaged within retail spaces, most of the time, it's engaged through kind of large digital screens. It's more focusing on the visual senses. For example, this is large-scale screens. This is in Korea, Samsung Town. And these are popping up all over the world right now. These huge, large-scale screens, kind of really engaging people within the visual sense to get people to kind of connect with brands within these different settings. This is New York, Japan, And again, the issue that we see here, though, is you see a lot of these giant screens popping up, and pretty much in every shopping mall in China now has one of these. They cost lots of money advertising them. There's one here, I think, in Chengdu, which I think is around $1 million for 30 minutes of kind of airtime. Is that some of them really do have people kind of taking pictures, but ultimately you're only connecting with people through the eyes, the visual sense. So they end up kind of missing out on this beat where people aren't truly being connected and engaged. And we see this happening a lot. And a really great designer, Neville Brody, once said, design is more than just a few tricks to the eye, it's a few tricks to the brain. And what we've learned over the years is that the best way to trick the brain and create a magical experience is really engaging in all of the senses, from the sense of sight, which we've just seen, touch, taste, sound, smell, and what we call the sixth sense now. And the sixth sense for us is this idea of social. In the last 3 years, especially here in China, the whole world has gone through this COVID pandemic, where we were locked inside and isolated from the outside world at different times. And the only way we could communicate with each other was through social media, through digital devices. And this has ended up becoming what we call the sixth sense, where actually this has become a communication method where, especially with brands trying to engage with consumers, is how do we engage with consumers digitally first before we engage with them offline. And so when people are thinking of, and we're thinking of design, we're always thinking about how do we also engage with people? Because ultimately, after COVID, we do want to go outside. So how do we engage people to want to go outside, and when they go outside, to choose to come to the venues that we've helped create? And how this kind of came into play, I want to show an example, was with Architects. They're doing really well here in China, and they wanted to do a pop-up shop within some major cities in China last year, and they were launching a new product called Komore B, which is this pattern inspired by sunlight shining through leaves. It's a Japanese word, and they wanted to kind of take that idea and how do we bring that to life within a physical space. So for us, when we thought about this idea, how do we kind of really bring that idea of living in a city, as I'm right here in Shanghai right now, we're not always close to nature. It's one of the most densely populated cities in the world. So how do you engage? How do you bring that story through? So we designed this idea of having this pop-up, which has this giant sun sphere. And this is only a sketch, but the idea was to have this giant sun sphere rotating around this pop-up. And the idea is you have all these columns within the pop-up space that meant the effect of trees, and then there's sunlight kind of passing through the trees and the leaves as you walk through this forest. The client loved this idea, and again, the idea was to engage all of the senses. So we created a couple of renders. This was one which was more of an open version. The sun sphere itself, we designed in the end, was around 2 meters in diameter, this huge sphere, which overhung and was powered by electrified track, which was also weatherproof, because the idea was to have this travel. We ended up then changing the design to have it a little bit more enclosed, because then we could have better control of light and the conditions inside, because we also wanted to engage the other senses, so we can control the sense of smell and sound a little bit better. And we also took into some kind of traditional Chinese ideas of the earth being square and the heavens being round, and took those kind of design elements into account. And then as you kind of walk through the space, the idea, we kind of moved from concrete columns to these kind of mirrored columns to represent the trees within a kind of a futuristic city setting. And as you walk through, there was mist, which was scented of the forest kind of wafting through. We had the sounds of the forest with the wind blowing through leaves. And each of the pillars actually was controlled by LiDAR. And that allowed us then to have these moments where, as you walk through, you're kind of engaging with the space. We were then fortunate enough to have this kind of launch just after kind of COVID in June time last year. And this is the video of the pop-up. Oh, sorry. So again, this pop-up was really one of my favorite in terms of, the client came to us and says, can we have a pop-up shop? But we wanted to deliver something that was more than just a pop-up shop and really an experience that people wanted to go see. Because I think that's one of the key things is, when we think about designing something, if it's outside of your remit, why would you want to go further afield to explore if it really is an experience? So we really wanted to engage all of those senses to create something that was mysterious, that had this kind of calmness. Again, this is a super busy shopping mall in Shanghai, one of the busiest, Grand Gateway. So we wanted to evoke a sense of peace and tranquility whilst in such a busy, sprawling metropolis shopping mall setting. The floor, for example, from a touch perspective, we actually used this running track kind of foam material, which had a give to it. So as you walk through it, really kind of gave you the feeling of walking through this kind of futuristic forest, having the smell, the sounds, the sight, and of course the social, it became a very kind of Instagram friendly space, which engaged people online to then have more people coming to see the pop-up and hugely successful. So when we think about that, I really think, that's the future of retail is we need to engage all of these senses. We always need to be thinking about them, not just from a visual point of view, but actually all of the senses and how they work together. The second part is really about this idea of co-creation to engage. When we go into spaces now, it's not just about going to see something, but actually taking part in the experience to create something new. This is Nike's House of Innovation here in Shanghai. They have a huge 4-story high LED wall, which at the bottom of it, they have this LED screen as well, which allows people to engage. It's a giant touch screen and do various different kind of games that they can play, which kind of takes sport and makes it more engaging and playful. And there's a giant leaderboard that kind of pops up at the end. So it, again, takes this moment where, retail, typically we're just there to purchase. What can we do to make it a lot more engaging so that we're actually having fun and not just buying goods? It's about how do we connect with the brand at a more holistic level. We were asked by Budweiser just after COVID in 2020, as China was kind of opening up, to create pop-up moments to engage consumers as they went through to nightclubs in cities all around China. And typically this is a spot as you enter a nightclub. I'm not sure if anyone's been to a nightclub recently, but you go to a nightclub, typically there's a wall, you kind of take your selfie and then you go and you get ushered into the club. And that's kind of like whilst you're waiting to go in. So as we were kind of briefed on this project, we kind of looked at it as we always do, using our methodology called Lucid: learn, understand, conceptualize, imaginate, and deliver. So we learned and understood, and we talked to various kind of people who go to nightclubs, from the people who go to frequent them, to DJs, to mixologists, to VJs, the club owners themselves, to really understand that moment that we're trying to capture and how people can take that selfie moment and really connect to the nightclub. And we actually discovered this isn't a moment that happens very often in nightclubs anymore, especially in China. Typically, everyone goes inside, they book a table in advance, they pay the cover charge, and they're ushered straight in. And that's where we kind of realized, actually, this isn't a moment that people are going to Instagram. So why have that moment here? Why not change that up? We then realized that actually the biggest moment is always at the stage where the DJ's performing, you know, where the music kind of hits this crescendo and everyone kind of drops the beat and they go crazy. So we looked at how we could co-create with the DJ. At first, I talked to a couple of friends who are DJs. Could we do something with the music? They said, please do not touch the music. We are the DJ gods. You know, we're here, we do our thing in the nightclub. You don't mess with our music. You know, we thought, how else could we co-create? And that's when we realized, you know, they've got these giant digital screens behind them. Could we do some content there? And that was something that everyone kind of agreed upon is something that is flexible, kind of easier to use, low cost. Again, this is just coming out of the first COVID, so budgets were tight, so we didn't want to have these huge build outs. So if we could use their audio and visual systems somehow, then that would be a great solution. As I was looking at these kind of shots of nightclubs that Budweiser had done performances in, I kind of looked at their bow tie kind of logo, brand mark, and we thought, wouldn't it be great if we kind of built a game around this? And I came up with this idea to design a car, a futuristic floating car that could be a race game that people could play in the nightclub. The client kind of loved the idea of the brand being starified in this way within the nightclub. So I quickly built out a test model, which is this one here. It's not very elegant, but it showed the potential. We can put nightclub names in the background. You have these giant bow tie archways that you go through to get power-ups. And the client said, go ahead, green light, go and make this happen. So one of my very talented designers, much better than myself at modeling there, he designed this version of the car, which still kind of embodies that tail light, because that's also what you see when you play a race game, and putting the King of Beers kind of logo, the crown mark, which is also part of Budweiser's branding on the top, and it kind of evoked the look and feel of a Maserati. And then within, I think it was just under a month, we developed and built a game, which that if you buy Budweiser at the table, you get to scan a QR code and play the game off your mobile device. We also built an AR experience where you scan the QR code and to, again, lower down the cost of building out 3D models to actually have on display. This card, you just scan the QR code and it appears on your screen. And the game was built. We built 2 levels. This is the second level, which people could play off their mobile devices on what we call the Red Planet. And the great thing with this is then you're in a moment with the DJ where you're co-creating the graphics whilst they're playing their music. The additional thing that we were able to do with this is that we built the game so that it would sound reactive, so that we plugged into the audio video system of the nightclubs. And as the DJ is playing his music, all of the flashing lights within the game would actually flash to the beat of the music. So it created something which was very special and unique every time someone played the game. And they launched this across nightclubs around China. It became very nimble in that all we needed to do then is have a laptop with the game, a Wi-Fi router, and that allowed us to immediately plug into the AV system and launch the game. And so it was very nimble and traveled very well. And this is one of the nightclubs that launched in. And again, you see the different size screens. It didn't really matter what screen it was. All we needed was those screens, and it would allow people to play the game. And of course, if you won the game, then you got to have your name in lights on the big screen. We also developed a series of cocktails, the customer journey, the flow. And then in 2021, because this was in 2020, we launched this campaign. And in 2021, they used the campaign again, and they were actually able to build, you can see here, the 3D spaceship, which was really cool to see that kind of come to life and actually be built out the second year running. And so for us, it's that idea of, you know, not just looking at these visuals, because ultimately they are very cool to look at, but how can you engage people to actually do something with that and create something? And ultimately in that moment of creation, they want to share that moment with their friends, because it's not just something that's put upon them, but it's actually something that they're making with the brands. And then the last part is, because again, we always get asked, a lot of it is technology, some of it's low tech. For example, Architects, that's a LiDAR device to make the columns kind of light up. Second one was using, digital devices. But then, we're always thinking, does the future of retail have to look techy, or is no tech the best tech? And this is Gentle Monster House here in Shanghai. They have these beautiful horses that are actually in their store. I think they have 6 in total. And when you go see them, the sight, the sound, the smell, it really, evokes the sense of majesty with these magnificent horses. But they're robots. And the idea of having these giant horses inside, nobody thinks about them as robots. When you look at everyone who's taking pictures and just experiencing this, the tech is hidden. And that's what we always think about. No tech is the best tech. Do we have to have it at the forefront? Or is it more about creating something that's magical in terms of experience? So when we're asked by clients, and this one was actually for an office project for Mindshare, they're a media buying agency, and we wanted to create something, their reception wall, they ask us to update their graphics in their office every year. And this is a chalk wall. And so we did something very classic for the first year using kind of typography and calligraphy to create this hand-painted chalk wall. But then as we kind of worked with them more in the second, third year, they were like, can we do something different? Again, they deal a lot with data analytics. So we wanted to create something that represented that. So we came up with this idea to do this heads-up display style screen, but actually all out of chalk. And we thought, could we make it move as well? Because that's what we're dealing with data analytics. Can we make it a little bit more engaging? So we came up with the idea and created this moving chalk wall. So it's all made of chalk. We've had, clients tell us that people have gone up and touched the wall and kind of like rubbed off bits and realized that it is actually hand chalked. And that's part of the beauty is, the tech is hidden. It doesn't have to be in your face. It can be something subtle. And can be crafted beautifully. So it's not just another kind of digital screen. And that's what we mean by no tech is the best tech. It's about creating something that is magical. So when we think about, retail experiences, these are the 3 kind of key takeaways for us is make it sensorial, make it engaging, and make it magical. Because for us, technology and the future of retail doesn't have to be cold, hard, and given. It can be engaging, it can engage with senses and bring a sense of co-creation and a sense of magic. And thank you for listening.
Right. Thank you so much. So, I was there in Shanghai last week with my team, and then I definitely saw some of those happening. And especially when we're talking about the 6 senses, I think there was quite a shock in Shanghai when I visited Xintiandi, and then I saw everyone was flocked to town center, and then obviously the consumption confidence is in the process of resuming. And then coming to Matt, I know that Matt has a store in the city center of Shanghai, and I wonder, what do you think about the ideas that Siu just shared? And if you have any stories to showcase the consumer's interests for brands and business that today our audience needs to pay attention to?
Well, okay. In fact, our business is quite similar with 6. Quite close to the 6 senses. It's because we are the bedding brand, and we contribute to people's sleep. And what contributes to a good sleep? It is about the temperature of your bedroom, and the light and the sound around you, and of course the texture and the touch of your bedding products. So I could really feel what he's saying. Of course, he's talking about the experience of the retail stuff instrument, but in fact it's the same. I actually understand what could really inspire or help or about people's decision of buying the 6 senses. So yes, it's quite interesting because we do the business online for the last like 6-7 years in China,
Right.
because the infrastructure of our e-commerce is quite good. So it's really the cheapest and the fastest way of starting a business in China. However, after 6 or 7 years, we decided that as a brand, we should, like what Siu said, make people engaged with the brand by any means. And what's interesting is bedding is an essential consumer products for everyone. However, in Shanghai, particularly in the center of Shanghai, it's quite difficult to find bedding stores.
Right.
Yeah, so then we thought to ourselves, this is our flagship store, the very first store of us. So where we want to place it, and so we really walked through different streets, different areas of Shanghai. Then we found the current one. It's at the Henshan Road. Now it's one of the very hard place for people, especially young people, to come. So. In that store, we work with a Taiwan design company. They used to do the hotel design, so they really understand what people need during sleep. So we talked to them, and as I said, we want people to come to the store not thinking about it's a traditional bedding store. You know, you buy all the linen, the pillow, and we want people to come to experience the fabric, the texture of our products, the temperature we trying to control in the store, and the sound, because one of our co-founder, she's major in music, so she did a lot for what people could hear during the tour in our store. Yeah, so I totally agree with what you said, and what we are trying to do is make people engaged with the brand, engaged with our products. And on another day, we talked about what's currently we are under the transition period of the China consumption. Yeah, especially after the pandemic. You know, in the past 3 years, we've been been through all the difficult times, being locked down and so on. So the e-commerce became bigger and bigger. And in the past, there's only one major platform, which is Tmall and Taobao.
Yeah.
During the last 3 years, we have Douyin, we have Kuaishou, we have Xiaohongshu. They all trying to do the e-commerce by themselves. So during the transition period, not in the past we could just be good at one thing, then we could survive. However, as there's more and more platforms, consumer and the consumption has been distracted. So for a brand, we need to understand. We have to understand everything. All the platforms we have to do. So it really creates the difficulties for the business growth. However, there's also a positive side is as there's more and more platforms, so they are trying to compete with each other. Yeah. And from what I can see is they are doing is to lower their service fee, and they are trying to do more service to the brands. So that's a positive side. So we could take advantage of that. Yeah, so basically that's what I've been observed after the pandemic.
Right. I think when you're talking about the transition of e-commerce platforms, I think it also echoes with what Siu just mentioned today. You know, more senses should be involved, more engaging ways and interactive ways of communicating with the customers, and then social function of all those platforms that allows those customers to share their opinions and connect it to other people. And then I think all those live streaming texts that are also making it possible for more people to join in those crowd discussions. And thinking about all those e-commerce performance and platforms, I think I recall that earlier this year when I was talking to one of our buyers from Shanghai, and he basically mentioned that, you know, e-channels are the main sales channels at the moment, and then what he had for offline stores is merely, you know, a demonstration of the brand that serves PR or branding purpose. But obviously that was before that China announced the reopening after the COVID policy. So I was just wondering, as both of you were living in Shanghai and been through the past 3 years, like, do you see any differences apart from the e-commerce channels that can give us more ideas on how consumers are behaving differently between the pre and the COVID periods? Well, I'll start with Matt.
Okay. Well, it's, in fact, I'd like to share one thing is there's a famous brand in China. It's called Neywai. It's pajamas and underwears. So in fact, they started to grow. I mean, they started to open their offline shops during the pandemic from 2020 to last year. They start from like 10 stores.
Okay.
Till now, they have like 140.
140. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I talked to the founders, and she told me they saw great opportunity to grow during the pandemic because a lot traditional, I would say, traditional brands they can't afford to sustain their offline stores. They have to go online. So they could. Comparing with the past, it's easier to get a better place with lower rents. So she saw the strategic point of the opportunity. So they made this decision to grow, you know, very fast offline. So one of the reasons I think she's trying to do this is because when we do, you know, we're trying to build up the brands from scratch, and we observed a very clear phenomenon is consumer see you and buy you in different channels. They will have different perception and even loyalty. So, for example, when we do the live stream with those huge big influencers, for example, Li Jiaqi, you know, over a day he could sold around like 2 or 3 million of our products. However, when we do the customer study or marketing research, people bought us from Li Jiaqi, but they didn't know us, don't even know our brand name. Yeah, when we reach him, we call him. Oh, I don't know Downland. But when a customer saw us and buy us at our flagship stores, they could easily remember our name, remember our story, and they would be very happy to listen to our story and to try our new products. So I think it's quite different, and that's the reason we need to have more collection in different ways, different means with our consumer. And what I could say is because we have our distribution channels all over China. They are all emerging from traditional offline stores. But it is really difficult for them in the past 3 years because most of the time people cannot go to the store. They cannot buy stuff from them at the stores. So they have to do the live stream. They have to WeChat people to send them a message, to send them the advertisement or the product's introduction. So I think what's now, as I've mentioned before, the offline store is becoming a hub to collecting people, but you could convert them by different means, not only offline, but also all the online means. So I think it will become quite a blended way of doing business.
Right. And what do you think, Siu?
I totally agree with everything Matt's just said there. You know, we work with various brands, you know, big brand names in cosmetics and in sport retail as well. And, you know, exactly as you said, you know, you can go through online channels first, like Jiaxi, and you can get the sales, but ultimately you're selling it as potential loss leader because you're giving really good rates, get people to try the products, but ultimately they might try and not even know what the product is named, because they got a great deal, and that's what they're looking for, is that great deal. I think lots of brands, though, however, in China have really been able to take advantage of the online, not just during COVID, but just in general. I think over the past decade, we've seen a lot of brands like Hame, for example, start off as an online retailer and then move into the physical stores. There's loads of beauty brands that have also done the same thing. And what that allows them to do is really test the products, test their business model, and find their own unique selling point prior to going into physical stores. And they build that following online first, and they build the fans, and they invest their money in less bricks and mortar stores and more on that social media online, as you said, engaging people online first, winning their hearts and minds. But then when we go into the physical store, because a lot of these offline brands, you know, as Matt said, have actually gone into physical stores now. And what that allows them to then do is really have the presence become something tangible. You know, this idea of, again, bricks and mortars. But again, when we open these bricks and mortar stores, it's not just to build a store to sell products, because ultimately you can sell a lot more products online than in each physical store. It's about creating an experience. And, earliest case study, this is, 10, 20 years old now, but Starbucks, if you think back how Starbucks started off, they did really well because they owned what we call the third space, where, it wasn't work, it wasn't home, it was a third space. You go there, you grab a coffee, sit there, read a book, have a meeting, fall asleep. You would just take that space, and that became your third space. Now people are looking for something else. They're looking for a third space, and brands have been able to provide that. Some brands that have done that really well here in China, for example, Burberry in Shenzhen Bay, they opened Burberry, and they opened a tea house. A lot of brands, they sell coffee now, but Burberry said, look, we're British, we have tea. So that's what they do. They have this high tea in the afternoon where you can book and you can have tea in a Burberry store. Nike here in Shanghai and all over China, actually, they started run clubs where they were specific spaces. They were not stores. They were actually spaces that people could meet up who have a passion for running. It could be marathons, or it just be, jogging around the city. They started these spaces up to allow people to really have a space, this idea of this third space. And it connects to the communities. Archterix do the same thing. We work with them. They have their climbing clubs, which they organize events. They have talks within their stores. And again, it's activating the stores to be something more than just for retail, but it's actually consumer engagement. And that's what we're seeing now, is how do you engage with your consumers? And that's that, so that stores are not just stores now, they're actually spaces that people want to go to. I watched another brand that has done exceptionally well here, and I think globally, Lululemon, where, I often find myself, because we work in retail, I'll be hanging out in the shopping mall 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just walking around, seeing how consumers' buying behaviors are. And most of the time at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, people are in the office, they're working. So the shopping mall is not particularly full. And what we found is Lululemon, probably, I would say 40 to 50% of the store is full.
Wow.
I mean, literally, yeah, people walking around, meandering, buying things, just hang out at the store. And they've been able to create this community space vibe where people just want to be there. They talk with the staff, who have kind of become experts and ambassadors of the brand. A lot of them practice yoga themselves. And so they are really in tune with the consumer subset and their lifestyle. And I think that's where we're looking at, where we're moving online to offline. It's all about this consumer engagement and really being authentic to the brand so that people want to go into this space as their third space.
Right, and you mentioned lifestyle. I think this is what I observed when I was in Shanghai. For instance, I went to one of the Sahame stores and I found that there was a bubble tea house inside the store. So whenever you are shopping, you can easily grab a chilled lemon tea and make you feel happy. And then it's like all the space more than just selling, and they are a combination of experience and engagement. But in the same time, I also noticed that for many of brands that operate in such a space, for them, there might be a increase of operational cost. But in the same time, for instance, in Hame shop, and I think they benefited a lot from the influence economy in China, in the way that their consumers have done their research online and come into store knowing what they want to experience. In that case, that the cost on training and recruiting sales force could be slightly lower. And I think, from your opinion and relating to what we've covered today, do you think this is one of the future trend, and what can brands do to make full use of this online economy, lifestyle, and influencers? I'll start Siu this time.
I think it is really still, as you said, I think consumers, not just here in China, but globally, have become much more savvy. The advent of AI, for example, now you can search online and ask it to do all the research for you, and very quickly kind of not be an expert, but at least understand and have basic understanding of a lot of different aspects of your own life. But I think, especially as you just mentioned there with the beauty category, we work with clients in that sector, and actually the consumers there know as much as the brands themselves. They know about the percentages of different kind of efficacy, the kind of active ingredients in the beauty products that actually work and help them. So they know as much as the brands themselves. So they become pseudo experts. So when consumers go there, they already know essentially what they want, and really it's about that experience. Again, we keep going back to that, but it is about experience. It's how does this brand speak to me, and is it a brand that I feel I can connect with? So when we think about it, exactly as you said, for the sales staff, it's not that they don't have the training, because I think they already know as well for the product, but it's about them being in line with them as well as an employer or ambassador of that brand. So a lot of brands now, when they're hiring people, and I think back to Apple. Apple did this for a very long time, finding people who are passionate about Apple, so that when you go in there, they really want to tell you about all the benefits of Apple. So it's finding people who are passionate and care about the industry sectors they work in. I think that has had such a big effect on ensuring that service levels, when we go in there, we're experienced in the brand. I'm sure with Matt as well, that people are passionate about what they're doing, they understand, they have the knowledge, and they can really talk and walk through with clients to help them with any kind of pain points or knowledge gaps that they can help fill.
Right. And Matt, how about you, from the perspective of a brand, and how do you see this? Also, your product is in the lifestyle category. Then, and how do you see, brands today can make full use of this future of retail in China? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so for us, we've seen all the participants of this retail business. You have brands, you have distributors, you have platform, you have the end consumers. I think together we've quite dedicated, beautiful net. So what we can do is, for example, when we said we build up those very high-tech pop-up stores to help consumer experience the take of the brands could bring to them, and then we will create a lot of content with the consumer together. then we could like collect those content and we could spread them online to more consumer. On the other hand, for us, we would also share all this content to our distributors, so they could use this to convert their consumers. So for me, it's like we have, as I said, we have very good infrastructure of communication here in China. So it is really a very good pipeline for all the participants to get benefited from all the experience we created. Even it's offline, we could convert them as it's some interesting or funny content online. Yeah. So I think this is what we can do as a brand.
Okay, thank you. So before we go to the Q&A session, so do you guys have any one sentence tip to our audience today? I will start with Matt this time.
Okay, so my one sentence tip is I would really suggest to put more attention to tier 2 or tier 3 cities in China. It's where now people have the money. Yeah, and that's the first thing. And secondly is, it's quite a personal opinion, lower the price for this year. Oh. It's gonna be a very tough year.
That's very practical.
Yeah, that's it.
Great. And how about you, Siu?
I think it's always, with brands, in the future retail in China, it's always about being authentic to the brand. Whatever you're doing, does it speak to what your brand is at the core? And if you're not sure what that is, then you need to find out, because the consumers here are very savvy. And if you're doing something that is off-brand, that doesn't speak to who you are, people can very quickly, fall out of love with brands. So we're very, very key is to really be authentic to who you are and find out what your USP is.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much, both. And I think we just have 10 minutes for Q&A session. So do we have any questions from the crowd? Right. So anyone, if you have questions, can you just type your questions in the chat box so we can see your question here? Right, I have one question here. From the presentations today, it is clear that retail in China is developing at a faster rate from the experience in the West and highly competitive, yet to see any robot horses in Covent Garden. So how would a UK brand get started given the competition being so fierce? So who would like to start answering this question first?
Did you want to start, Matt, or myself? Okay, so I think if you're a UK brand coming to China, really, again, going back to that, finding out what your USP is, what works in the UK might not work here. So it's really doing that research and insights to understand what consumers' expectations are. Again, it depends on the brand. I'm not sure what the brand would be, but it's really understanding what the usage, behavior, consumers behave very differently here in China to overseas. So it's understanding, the cultures, the differences. I think Matt highlighted some things about second tier, third tier, first tier cities. Every city in China is different. So it's not kind of blanketing and saying China, everyone's the same, but actually cultures differ, and I think back to the UK, I'm from Nottingham. And, cultures in Nottingham are different from down south and up north. We're from the Midlands. So you've got to think of that way about China. It's a huge population and every city has its different subtle nuances. So it's really doing that research and understanding which city you want to enter, who your target audience is, and then going deeper and diving deeper to understand what their wants and needs are. So it's doing the research, really. I think that for me is the most important thing.
Okay, over to you, Matt.
So for me, in fact, yesterday I had a conversation with our MCN, who is helping us to do the content and the sales online, and we all found it's quite difficult this year to really do the business. But what we have in common is we think we should forget about our product,
Right.
because in the past, in the past many years, we are short of very good product here in China. So in the past, you have a very good product, you have the benefits, then you come to China and you can sell. However, now the supply is quite sufficient. So first thing I think is we should really, when you come to China, you should really kind of think about how to create your unique content based on your unique selling point. That's very, very key. So secondly is I think find the right partner,
Right,
to help you to understand the market. So that's what I would suggest.
great. And okay, I think we're waiting for more questions to coming in, but in the meantime, Matt and Siu, do you have anything to add to what we just covered today?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thank you for inviting me to speak today.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm okay too. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. It's glad to have you. And as one of this audience mentioned, thank you all. It's been a really insightful session and it's really great. So I think if we don't receive any more questions, we're gonna call it off. And thank you very much all for attending this webinar today. And we hope to see more of events with Matt and Siu in the future. So make sure that you come to check out CBBC's event page. Great. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.